Hey everybody, welcome to Readers Are Right. We've got an awesome plan for today. We're going to be talking about Brandon Sanderson's secret projects, something I was extremely excited for and backed. So I've got all 4 physical copies here, and I absolutely loved. So join me after the jump, and we'll talk about it. Welcome back, everybody. We've got a big one today, and it's by one of my favorite authors of all time, Brandon Sanderson. He pulled off something that no one thought possible with his Kickstarter this last year, and I was so happy to join. I'm super excited, and I loved all of these books. So we're going to talk about it today. But first, I want to know down in the comments, what was your favorite book out of these? If you haven't read them, which one are you looking forward to the most? Check them out. I absolutely recommend all of them. Depending on which genre you like, what style you like, they're all wildly different, and they're all spectacular. So let's dive right into it. The first book, Trust the Emerald Sea. We got that back in March. It is a present Brandon made for his wife that he based on The Princess Bride. This book is probably one of my favorites he's ever written. It's definitely in the top 5. And it's the place I recommend you start reading Brandon Sanderson. It's a good standalone novel that introduces you to his writing style and his humor and things like that, but is still very deep and very good. It also has a lot of layers to it. So if you've already read The Cosmere and you're deep into it, there will be things in there that you notice that you probably wouldn't notice if it's your first time reading it and this is your first book. But that's okay. It doesn't hurt the story if you miss that. It just makes it more enjoyable if you go back and reread it. Like a lot of Brandon's novels, rereading them often leads to discovering things you had no idea were in there the first time, and adds to the story. So it's definitely on my reread list. Don't know when I'm going to get to it. So I've still got one more of his novels coming out this year that I want to get to, as well as a couple other books that I'm going to be reading once again, like Quill and Vial by my friend Bree Moore. So this may be another year or so before I actually get a chance to read it again, but I definitely will. It's also one of my favorite point of views, being narrated by a narrator who's in the story, but not always in the story. It's a very different narration. It's something that I really want to try. As an author, I've said this a lot. Brandon is a big influence on me. His writing style and mine are drastically different, but he does a lot of very cool things that I want to try doing in my version. So stay tuned. Maybe I'll pull one of those out eventually. The next is a non-Cosmere novel, The Frugal Wizard's Handbook to Surviving Medieval England. The title is a mouthful. The story is not. It's spectacular. This type of science fiction has been one that I have loved for a very, very long time. So seeing him write it well, and write it with the usual Brandon flair with a lot of twists and turns and things that you may have seen coming but thought it wasn't possible, and other things you never saw coming. And his use of the combination of magic and science fiction is something I absolutely love, and something I have done in my writing as well, in a couple science fiction novels and short stories. I love to blur the line between science fiction and fantasy a little bit when I'm writing. He is a lot more lighthearted than I am. I tend to float closer to the grimdark than he does, which is fine. I love reading his books. They're a great break for me as well when I am reading grimdark. So typically how I do it is I'll read a couple grimdark novels, and then I'll pivot to a lighter Brandon Sanderson novel or someone similar to help break up the grimdark nature of everything. But this was spectacular. I loved reading it. Absolutely recommend it if you're a science fiction fan. If you're a science fiction fan and you've never read Brandon Sanderson, this is a good place to start, along with the Skyward series. Both are very, very good novels. well, that one's a series. This one's an excellent novel. I'm excited to see that series come to a close next month. So we're going to be busy. Okay. So the next one is my least favorite of the four. I should preface that with also stating it's the least favorite of the four, still an excellent novel. It's Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. I'm not a big romance guy. It's not something I'm big into reading. I don't tend to like all of the tropes. But if you are a romance reader, this is where you read Sanderson, or where you start with Sanderson. Everyone I know that enjoys romance loves this book. It has some amazing stories, some amazing twists, also some very unique magic system ideas, which I know Brandon's famous for, but even this one's even a little bit more of a stretch for him, which I loved. It does have the Brandon Sanderson touch to it, but it is more romance. So it's a little bit slower paced than he usually goes. There's a lot more focus on the relationship than there is on the world and the situation and everything going on around him, which, like I said, typical romance, not my typical read, but still very good. Still definitely my top half favorite books that I've ever read. But yeah, probably my least favorite Sanderson so far. But yeah, least favorite Sanderson is still way up my list. So if you're big into romance and you've got a lot of people talking to you about Sanderson, read Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. Very good. The artwork in this is amazing as well. I loved how he took a lot of Korean and Asian influences in this as well. He has done that in the past, but it's more heavily present in this. So it was fun to see those represented as well. Now, for the last one. This one is in a fight between it and Tress for my favorite of the four. I love them both for very, very different reasons. Tress is a very comfortable, cozy read. It's a very traditional epic fantasy that you can enjoy easily. It's also a very good entry to Sanderson because you get very much that old school fantasy feel to it without the pressure of the Cosmere being present. The opposite is true in The Sunlit Man. This is borderline a space western fantasy. Yeah. It's very much in the Cosmere, very much an epic fantasy by trait. There's a lot of reluctant hero tropes in here, but there are also spaceships, flying ships, and it's very much the rogue outlaw who stops to help people story. Love those stories. Loved them my whole life. They're some of the best movies and stories I've read in the Western genre. And he takes a lot of that here, mixes it in with a little fantasy and a little bit of science fiction, and absolutely nails it. On top of that, I think this is my favorite cover. It's hard to tell, but the blacks and golds on this cover are all metallic, as well as black body. And with the amount of fire and flame and lava that's involved in the story, this cover is spectacular. So, absolutely recommend this. This is a read once you've read Stormlight Archives story, because there's a lot of references you will miss. You'll probably still enjoy it if you pick this up first, but reading Stormlight first will introduce you to our main character in the story, as well as help you understand a lot of the references to Shadesmar, Sprin, all of the fun world that Brandon Sanderson's created, and you'll get a lot more out of it. But absolutely read that book. It is fantastic. Once again, it's a good standalone. You're not going to miss much. if you start there, well, you'll miss a lot, but you won't realize you're missing a lot. So absolutely keep reading it, pick it up. Definitely a recommendation. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. If you guys participated in the year of Sanderson, let me know below. If you haven't, all of the books, I believe, are available now at bookstores as well as online at his sites or an ebook and audiobook. Audiobooks will be through Spotify, not on Audible, due to some ongoing conversations between Brandon and Audible about royalties for authors and things like that. I have seen them available on Kindle. I do recommend doing that as well. You will miss out on some of the aesthetics. So eventually, get a physical copy, because you'll see things like this beautiful artwork. This is just inside the front cover, and won't spoil too much. Every single one of these books has spectacular artwork like that. I don't know if they made it into mass market copies. I really hope they did, because they add so much to the books. Yeah, check them out. Let me know below if you guys have any other recommendations, things you want me to talk about. And next week, I think we'll bring up another group or collection of books that I absolutely love and have been dying to talk about. So join us next week and keep writing.